The signal came without sound or light. It slipped into Earth's networks like a quiet breath. No warning followed it. No message asked for peace or threat. It only watched. Most systems did not even notice it at first. Data flowed as normal. Screens glowed. Numbers moved. Life continued. John worked the night shift in a small control room. He watched long lines of data scroll across his screen. It was simple work. He checked for errors and reported problems. John liked calm tasks. He liked patterns that made sense. That night the patterns felt wrong. Small gaps appeared in the data stream. They were not errors. They were not noise. They were empty spaces placed too neatly. John leaned closer to the screen. He ran checks again. The system said all was normal. Still the gaps stayed. They appeared every few seconds like someone blinking. John felt a cold touch in his chest. He saved the data and marked it for review. He did not know why, but he felt it mattered. Far away, Emma stood in an open field beside a tall relay tower. She worked with tools and wires, fixing links between stations. She liked being outside. She trusted her hands more than screens. That morning her equipment felt slow. Signals arrived late. Power dipped for a moment, then returned. Birds went quiet. The air felt heavy like before a storm. Emma checked the lines again. Nothing looked broken. Still her readings felt off. Tiny delays stacked together. She felt watched, though no one stood nearby. Emma shook her head and kept working. She had learned not to panic. Panic broke more things than calm ever did. Across the world, small changes began to spread. Traffic lights paused before turning green. Elevators stopped for a second between floors. Payment systems took longer to answer. None of it caused disaster. None of it was enough to scare people. It was just enough to notice. In a city market, people waited and talked while machines rebooted. In a hospital, staff switched to backup systems and moved by hand. In a school, teachers turned off screens and spoke face to face. People adjusted. They always did. The signal moved through all of it. It did not push or pull. It listened. It counted how long humans waited before acting. It measured how often they helped instead of blamed. It watched hands reach out when machines failed. John sent his report before dawn. He kept it simple. Pattern gaps found. Not random. Request review. He expected no reply. Many reports vanished into archives. Still he felt better after sending it. He stood and stretched. Outside the sky grew pale. Emma finished her repairs by noon. She logged the delays and sent her notes. She added a short line at the end. Feels external. Not weather. She hesitated before sending it, then did so anyway. Engineers trusted facts, but feelings sometimes mattered too. As the day went on, the signal learned more. It learned that humans argued but still shared tools. It learned that leaders spoke on screens but workers solved problems on the ground. It learned that when systems slowed, people filled the space with effort. In one town, a power dip shut down heating. Neighbors brought blankets. In another, trains paused. Passengers shared water and stories. The signal watched faces. It marked stress and choice. It noted that fear rose but did not rule. John received a reply late that night. It was short. We see it too. Keep watching. His hands shook a little as he read it. He was not alone. That mattered. He pulled up more data and began to map the gaps. A shape formed. It was wide. It was careful. Emma met with her team the next morning. They spoke in plain words. No one laughed at the idea of an outside cause. They had seen too much to deny it. They planned backups and shared routes. They prepared without shouting. The signal slowed its touch. It did not want to break anything. It wanted to see what happened when nothing pushed hard. It wanted to see who humans were when the world leaned slightly off balance. News outlets mentioned minor delays and technical checks. Most people nodded and moved on. A few looked up at the sky longer than usual. Children asked questions. Parents gave honest answers. We don't know yet, they said. That was true. John went home after his shift. He made tea and sat by the window. The city hummed, slower but steady. He thought about the gaps. He thought about someone watching. He did not feel hate from it. He felt curiosity. Emma stood by the tower at sunset. The sky burned orange and red. Her tools were packed. Systems were stable again. Almost. She rested her hand on the metal frame and felt a faint vibration, like a distant drum. The signal recorded one last thing that day. It recorded that when watched, humans did not freeze. They did not fall apart. They noticed. They adapted. They stayed human. And so the watching continued, quiet and patient, as Earth turned under unseen eyes. The ships appeared as small lights beyond the moon. At first they looked like distant stars that moved the wrong way. Then telescopes adjusted and the truth became clear. The lights were objects. They were metal. They moved with purpose. They stayed far from Earth, just far enough to feel safe, just close enough to be seen. No weapons fired. No message came. The ships only watched and tested. Energy waves rolled across space. They were gentle but wide. Satellites felt them first. Power levels dipped and rose again. Communication lines slowed. Radar screens blinked. The test was quiet, but it touched everything. On Earth, alarms rang in control rooms, then softened as systems adjusted. Leaders met on screens and shared reports. No one gave the order to attack. The ships stayed distant. Humans chose to wait. David worked at a regional power station near a river. He was not a hero. He was a team leader who knew wires, switches, and people. When the first surge hit, one generator stalled. Lights flickered across nearby towns. David did not shout. He called his team. "Backup plan," he said. "Same as drills." They moved fast but calm. One person checked fuel flow. Another reset controls by hand. David watched the readings and guided them step by step. The second wave hit harder. Power spiked, then dropped. A transformer burned out. David swore once, then took a breath. He called another station and shared the load. He sent messages to other teams with clear steps. Tools moved from place to place. Knowledge moved faster. Across the country, Alice stood in a large community center that had become a supply hub. She worked with lists, maps, and people. When systems slowed, food orders paused. Medical deliveries delayed. People grew worried. Alice did not panic. She spoke to drivers and volunteers. "We switch routes," she said. "We share stock." She opened storage rooms that had not been used in years. She paired strong workers with careful ones. She made sure the elderly and sick were first. When power failed in one area, Alice sent food from another. When water pumps slowed, she organized hand delivery. She listened more than she talked. People trusted her because she trusted them. Above it all, the ships adjusted their tests. One ship pushed a narrow beam toward Earth's magnetic field. Another increased speed, circling faster. The watchers measured response times. They counted errors and fixes. They marked how often humans helped instead of blamed. In a city, trains stopped between stations. Passengers waited in the dark. Someone shared a flashlight. Someone else shared a joke. A conductor walked the cars and explained the delay. People nodded and waited. In a small town, internet failed. Families stepped outside. They talked on porches. Children played games without screens. Fear rose, but it did not rule. David's team worked through the night. Sweat soaked their clothes. Hands ached. Still, the power stayed on for most homes. When one area went dark, another stayed bright. Balance held. Alice slept for 2 hours on a chair, then stood again. She drank water and checked her lists. A hospital called for help. She rerouted supplies and sent volunteers with bikes when trucks stalled. Care reached those who needed it. The watchers noted something new. Humans did not rush to strike. They did not try to show strength through force. They showed strength through repair. One ship sent a stronger pulse. It knocked out several satellites at once. News spread fast. Some voices demanded action. Others called for calm. Meetings grew tense. Still, no attack came from Earth. David watched the grid map glow and dim. He made a hard choice. He shut down one zone to save 5 others. He informed the town leaders. He explained why. They agreed. Candles lit homes. People checked on neighbors. Alice walked through the center and thanked volunteers by name. She fixed small problems before they grew. She shared meals with tired workers. She kept care steady. The ships slowed. The tests shifted from force to patience. They watched how long humans worked without rest. They watched how humans replaced machines with hands and voices. A repair team in another country shared a fix online. David used it within minutes. Alice sent extra food to that team when she heard they were struggling. Lines crossed borders. Help ignored flags. By the 3rd day, systems stabilized. Not perfect but strong. The ships stayed distant, silent. The watchers completed their records. They recorded that humans adapted under pressure. They recorded shared tools, shared plans, shared hope. They recorded patience. When the lights in David's town stayed on through the final test, he smiled and leaned back. When Alice saw full shelves again, she rested her hands and breathed. Far above, the ships turned slightly as if nodding. The test ended for now. The 3rd test did not arrive quietly. Dark clouds rolled in from the oceans. Winds rose without warning. Rain fell hard and fast. At the same time, signals weakened across the world. Radios cracked. Screens froze. Maps lost their lines. Cities felt pressed from all sides. The Watchers increased the pressure. They wanted to see what broke first. In one coastal city, waves hit the walls and spilled into streets. Power lines swayed. Pumps struggled. Emergency alerts failed in some areas. People looked up at the sky and then at each other. Fear moved fast, but so did action. Mark stood in a large sports hall that had become a training center. He was tall, calm, and clear in his words. He had trained workers before storms many times. This storm felt different, but his voice stayed steady. Simple steps, Mark said. Buddy system. Clear roles. Protect kids and the old first. Volunteers listened. Some were scared. Some were tired. Still they nodded. Mark showed them how to move people safely, how to stack supplies, how to stay out of danger. He trained fast, changing plans as new reports came in. Outside, rain cut visibility. Streets flooded. Mark sent teams with ropes and lights. When radios failed, runners carried messages. When a plan failed, Mark changed it. He did not wait for perfect information. He used what he had. Across the city, Lucy worked in a hospital that shook under the wind. She wore plain clothes and a tired face. She had been awake too long. Machines beeped, then went quiet as backup power took over. Some systems stayed dark. Lucy did not freeze. She moved beds by hand. She assigned staff to watch patients without screens. She spoke softly to those in pain. When one wing lost power, she moved the weakest patients first. She kept records on paper. She trusted hands and eyes. Signal loss cut the hospital from outside help. Lucy made choices. She canceled non-urgent care. She saved medicine. She reused tools after careful cleaning. She asked nearby clinics for staff and sent her own when they could spare them. Care flowed both ways. The storm grew worse. Another wave of pressure hit. The Watchers pushed weather and data together. They watched traffic maps turn red then fade. They watched supply lines bend. They waited for panic. In a high-rise, elevators failed. Neighbors knocked on doors. They shared stairs. They checked on those who could not walk. In shelters, people made space for strangers. Arguments happened, but they ended. Order held. Mark received a report that a river wall might fail. He sent teams to reinforce it with sandbags and steel. When trucks could not reach the site, people carried bags by hand. Lines formed. Hands passed weight. The wall held. Lucy faced a hard moment when oxygen ran low. She chose who needed it most. She explained her choice. Families cried, but they understood. She stayed with them. She did not hide. The Watchers noticed how fast humans change plans. When storms blocked roads, humans used boats. When data failed, they used paper. When leaders lost contact, local groups acted on trust. The weak were moved first. The strong took risks. Another city lost all power. Night fell heavy and black. Fires did not spread. People used lamps. Police walked instead of drove. Volunteers guided traffic by whistle and hand. Calm moved street to street. Mark's voice grew hoarse. Still, he trained new volunteers as old ones rested. He praised small wins. He corrected mistakes without shame. He listened to ideas from anyone. Some of the best plans came from people with no rank. Lucy finally sat for a minute beside a patient who slept. She closed her eyes, then opened them again. She stood up and kept going. The hospital stayed open through the worst hours. At the peak of the storm, the Watchers pushed once more. A wide signal hit communication hubs. For a moment, the world felt cut apart. Then humans bridged the gaps with movement and care. When the pressure eased, the clouds broke. Rain softened. Signals returned in pieces. Systems rebooted. Cities were damaged but alive. Mark walked through the hall and thanked every volunteer. He shook hands and shared food. Lucy watched dawn light touch the windows and allowed herself a breath. Far above, the Watchers completed their notes. Humans did not shatter. They bent and held. They protected the weak. They changed fast. Fear came but order stayed. The test ended, leaving scars and proof. The final test did not strike the ground or the sky. It struck the mind. Messages appeared across networks that had just begun to heal. They looked official. They carried seals and codes. Each message told a different story. One said a neighbor nation had made a secret deal with the Watchers. Another said a rival had planned an attack during the storms. Old fears were pulled to the surface. The Watchers waited. This test was simple. If humans turned on each other, the record would be clear. In the first hours, anger spread fast. Talk shows shouted. Feeds filled with sharp words. Borders tightened. Ships changed course. Soldiers were placed on alert. Old wounds reopened. The pressure felt heavier than the storms. John saw the messages while working in the same quiet control room. He compared timestamps and routes. The stories did not line up. Small details were wrong. Words were placed to push fear. John felt the same cold touch he had felt during the first signal. He sent a warning to his team. Pattern match. False source. Do not react alone. Others began to check. They shared findings across secure lines. Lies unravel when light is shared. Emma stood at a hilltop station watching antennas turn. She heard the anger on the radio. She also heard calm voices pushing back. Engineers from different nations spoke in plain terms. They compared notes. They found the same false marks John saw. Leaders met not once but many times. Some talks were loud. Some ended badly. Still they returned. They argued over trust and fear. They asked hard questions. They demanded proof. Proof arrived piece by piece. Data showed the messages came from the same source. They used old codes and new tricks. The goal was clear. Divide first. Watch what followed. The watchers leaned closer. This was the moment that mattered. Public statements changed tone. Leaders asked people to wait. Experts spoke together on shared screens. They admitted what they did not know. They promised to verify before acting. The noise softened. John worked without sleep. He traced the false threat through layers of masks. He found a path that led not to Earth but out. The signal bounced beyond the moon, then vanished. John packaged the data in a clean report. He added nothing extra. Truth did not need color. Emma helped align a deep space transmitter. She checked the angles twice. Wind moved her jacket. The sky looked clear for the first time in days. She felt the weight of the moment and kept her hands steady. Across the world people watched. Some feared betrayal. Others hoped for calm. Communities talked. Online fights cooled into questions. Families discussed history and choice. The choice became shared. A joint message was written by many nations together. It was short. It rejected the false threat. It stated unity under test. It asked for no war and promised defense only if needed. It was signed by many names. John sent his proof with the message. Data not demands. Patterns not threats. The signal moved outward, clean and clear. For a long moment nothing happened. Emma looked up as the transmitter finished its run. She scanned the sky with her eyes. Far away a faint light shifted. It did not approach. It did not flee. It turned. The false messages stopped. Feeds cleared. Systems stayed quiet. The pressure lifted like a held breath released. People noticed what did not happen. No strikes. No broken ties. No sudden orders. That absence spoke loudly. In city squares, screens showed the joint statement. Applause broke out in some places. In others, people just nodded and went back to work. Unity did not need celebration. It needed practice. John leaned back in his chair. His hands trembled. He let them. He thought about the first gaps he had seen and how far they had led. He saved the final files and shut down his screen. Emma stayed on the hill as the stars returned. She felt watched one last time, then not. The sky felt wide again. Far above, the watchers ended the test. Humans had argued. Humans had doubted. Then humans had stood together. The record was complete. The watchers began to leave without sound or light. Their ships did not rush. They turned away in slow arcs, careful and calm. Instruments on Earth felt the change first. Pressure faded. Signals cleared. The strange weight that had followed the planet for days lifted. In distant space, a final record was written. Earth was marked aware. Earth was marked resilient. Earth was marked human. On the ground, the change felt small at first. Systems stayed on. Skies stayed clear. No new test came. People waited, unsure if it was truly over. Then hours passed. Then a full day. Normal sounds returned. Traffic flowed. Screens stayed bright. The quiet fear loosened its grip. David stood in the power station and watched the grid hold steady. Numbers stayed in safe ranges. No alarms rang. He had not slept well in days. His back hurt. His hands were rough and sore. Still the light stayed on. He gathered his team and thanked them. He did not give a speech. He named each person and what they had done. He told them to go home. Some smiled. Some just nodded and walked out, tired to the bone. David drove home through streets that looked the same but felt different. Stores were open. People crossed roads without rushing. He parked and sat in the car for a moment, breathing. He felt proud, not loud pride, but a quiet weight in his chest. Inside his home was still. He washed his hands and face. He sat down and closed his eyes. The world had not broken. That was enough. Across the city, Alice stood outside the supply center as the sky changed color. The sun rose slow and warm. She watched light touch the buildings. For the first time in many days her list was empty. Volunteers cleaned and laughed softly. Trucks returned to normal routes. Shelves filled again. Alice thanked people and sent them home. She took a deep breath and smiled at the sunrise. In hospitals, Lucy finally slept for a full night. In training halls, Mark packed away ropes and lights. In control rooms, John archived files and shut down extra screens. Emma climbed down from her tower and rested her hands. News reports shifted tone. They spoke of recovery, not threat. Experts explained what was known and what might never be known. People listened and moved on. Life does that. Children went back to school. Workers returned to routine. Farmers checked fields after the storms. Damage was repaired. Scars stayed but they healed. Far above, the last watcher looked back once. The planet turned blue and white, busy and alive. The record did not list weapons or speed. It listed choices. Patience under pressure. Order over fear. Care for the weak. Willingness to change. That was enough. On Earth, people did not cheer the sky. Most never knew how close judgment had come. They felt only relief and a strange closeness to one another. Neighbors nodded more. Strangers helped without being asked. David woke later that day and cooked a simple meal. Alice shared breakfast with friends. The sun climbed higher. The day moved on. Humans had been measured. Humans had endured.